So welcome everybody and good morning. This is Yisrael David here for Virtual Kollel, and I'm broadcasting from beautiful Hudson, Wisconsin, and from Beth Emmanuel Messianic Congregation, Messianic Synagogue. And hopefully some of you guys will be able to join me live, as you have been able to in the last couple weeks here. Actually, we've had people who have been able to join us live, at least virtually. And so now I have somebody here who's live in front of me, so that's also really great. So we might have some interaction there as well. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be really looking into some of the historical background of this Haftorah. So yesterday we took some time to go ahead and look through the Haftorah itself, through the text of the Haftorah. And today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the historical background of the Haftorah before we get into more of a textual study. Yesterday, we kind of just glossed over the text. We just read through it, and we didn't really give it much study or thought or anything like that, other than just kind of reading and translating, that kind of a thing. So before we get into going more in depth into things, we're going to be looking at the historical background again. So first off, I need to say something about the question of authorship. So there's a question of authorship of Isaiah, of the second portion of Isaiah. Excuse me, I'm just kind of moving some things around here. There's a question of authorship because the two kind of halves of the book are very they're very different. And well, I don't want to say that they're very different, but they are different. And so the first half, chapters 1 through 39, have one kind of understanding of things, and the second half, and it's there's a lot of like admonitions and things like that. And the second half, chapters 40 through 66, are really what's called Nevuot Nachama. So they're like prophecies of comfort, and that's where we're going to get it. We're going to get all the 7 weeks of prophecies of comfort, 7 weeks of consolation, as the series is called. It comes from the second half of the book of Isaiah, and so the question is that there is an issue of authorship. So there's those people that say, especially as we'll look at today, what the prophet talks about in the background, I should say, for chapter 40 of the book. And so because there are so many things that are spoken of that happen hundreds of years in the future from Isaiah. Now, I'm not talking about things that happen in the Gospels or anything like that. I'm just talking about things that happen way into the future, and so we'll go ahead and take a look at some of those issues. Let's see here. I'm thumbing through. I can't really find anything here. Okay. So I'm going to read an introduction. This is the Art Scroll introduction to things from this sefer right here. And unfortunately, don't know if you have it. You might have it actually. Turn to the book of Isaiah and see if you have this introduction here. But I'll go ahead and start reading. And it's just a really short introduction. And so this, of course, is the Orthodox version of the introduction to Isaiah. And so there are some that balk at this introduction, and then I'll go ahead and I want to read some historical context as well from Torah Club. So Isaiah was a member of the Judean aristocracy. His long career as a prophet spanned 86 years. So here it's positing that his career as a prophet, not his life, spanned from 619 BCE to 533 BCE. So that'll be very key here in a moment as we look at some of the background of this week's Haftorah. A period during which he uttered some of the most stirring and lyrical prophecies in all of Scripture. Far more Haftorahs are taken from the book of Isaiah than from any other book. Isaiah lashes out at the wicked among his people and warns them of dire destruction but he also consoles and comforts. So there you have like the two halves of the book. So the first half of the book, he's kind of like lashing out, if you will, at some of the corruption and things like that in the city of Jerusalem and the city, the northern cities as well. And we looked at that when we looked at the prophecy having to do with the first chapter of the book, the third week of the 3 weeks, right? And so where he deals with Achaz, King Achaz, the wicked King Achaz, and how he's wanting to make an alliance with the Assyrians as he's getting attacked from all the different angles and everything like that. Keeping on, let's continue. He lashes out the wicked among his people and warns them of their destruction, but he also consoles and comforts. Interestingly, this book is the source both of the chilling vision of Isaiah, which is the Haftorah that we looked at, which is part of the 3 weeks of Ben Mitzrayim, and the last of those weeks being known as Chazon Yeshayahu, the vision of Isaiah, and that's that Shabbat, or that Haftorah of the 3rd week, right before the 9th of Av. That is read in the Sabbath before the 9th of Av, and the 7 prophecies of consolation that follow it. He foretold the exile that took place during his lifetime, as a powerful Assyrian army under Sennacherib conquered the northern kingdom and scattered its people around the Assyrian kingdom, so that they would lose their Jewish identity. Then the seemingly invincible Assyrian ruler moved against Judah, but Isaiah prophesied that at this time the army would be wiped out. Isaiah's contemporary, Hosea, prophesied to the northern kingdom at the time Isaiah prophesied to the kingdom of Judah. So you have Hosea, who's a prophet to the northern kingdom, and Yeshayahu, who definitely lives in the southern kingdom and is prophesying to the southern kingdom. Like the other prophets of that era, he railed against idolatry. Indeed, as soon as the notorious idolater King Manasseh assumed the throne, he had Isaiah murdered. And so you can see that in Tractate Yevamos. I have to give you the page exactly. I forget exactly which page in Yevamos, but it talks about King Manasseh sawing Isaiah in half. And actually, in Hebrews chapter 11, we have the same tradition, although it doesn't necessarily attribute it to the prophet Isaiah being sawed in half. However, there is, that similar, similar thing that is talked about there as in the Gemara, in the Talmud. Let's see, lost my place. And let's see here. Okay, there we go. The prophet stressed the holiness of the people and the sanctity of the temple service. He condemned the hypocrisy and the attitude that habitually performed commandments were satisfactory. Habitually performed commandments, and the attitude that habitually performed commandments were satisfactory, and taught that a Judaism empty of sincerity and striving is not Judaism. So religion, sacrificing to God, etc. Do you have the same?
Yeah.
Oh, you do. Awesome. Okay, very cool. Could anyone think that lip service without content would satisfy God? Is it ironic that the secular scholars praise Isaiah for his cadences and lyricism? People speak of Isaiah the poet, the prophet who so condemned empty talk and insincere service. His prophecies have yet to be fulfilled. They clearly await the final redemption, when the earth will be filled with the purity and holiness he demanded, etc. So those are some of the things that are talked about. Now I want to go ahead and go over to Isaiah chapter 40, and I believe here that there might be an introduction. And if not, I'll go ahead and read an introduction from Torah Club. Torah Club put out by First Fruits of Zion, for anybody who's not familiar, a Messianic organization. And let me go ahead and go over here to see. Okay, hold on one moment. Yes, there's a little bit of an introduction, so I'm going to go ahead and read this. Up to now, the book has consisted mostly of chastisements to Israel and prophecies about the punishments that will befall its enemies. The final 27 chapters of the book, beginning with this chapter, concentrates on words of consolation and the future Messianic redemption. This theme is why the sages in Baba Basra 15a characterized the book of Isaiah as Kula Nechamta, entirely of comfort. Indicative of that is the seven Haftorahs of comfort and consolation, which we're reading and going through these weeks, these next 7 weeks. Let's see here. And hope for the future are read after Tisha B'Av come from this book. Isaiah now looks ahead to the future of Israel, knowing that the nation is destined to endure a long and painful exile before the Messianic age. He devotes his prophecies to encouraging the nation to be strong during its travails and to have faith that the longed for redemption will come. The future will be so bright that the exile will be forgotten. He also speaks of the other shorter Babylonian exile, which would end 180 years later after Isaiah's death, when King Cyrus invited the Jews of his kingdom to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. So now, notice here it's talking about things that are happening 180 years into the future. That's really difficult as we get to some of Isaiah's later prophecies. Now, there's a couple different ideas of how that could happen. So the first idea is that, okay, all of the second half of the book was written either during the time of the exile or after the time of the exile. So that would obviously split Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, into 2 pieces. So it would be chapters 1 to 39 and then chapter 40 through 66. So you can take that if you like it. I'm not saying that that's necessarily something that is out of the bounds, if you will, and that could be something simply as much as saying that, okay, here is a prophecy that, hold on 1 second here, I need to just turn my phone down. Okay, there we go. That could be saying that it's just another author who's adding something as an addendum to the book of Isaiah and calling it under one name. And to be sure, you have schools of prophets and things like that, or people that are writing in the spirit of different prophets. So that's not out of bounds. And there's, I believe, that Ibn Ezra, who talks about this. I'll have to look and see for next time that we're together, if it's Ibn Ezra, I think, or it could be the Radak. I'm not exactly sure. So, and my apologies to the Ibn Ezra or the Radak if neither of them did. But I'm pretty sure one of them wrote about something in his introduction to Isaiah. So the other idea is that Isaiah is writing about prophecies that happen hundreds of years in the future. Now, from the apostolic idea here, and I want to read you something from Torah Club here, which is the subject, and kind of gives, I think, a kind of a balanced idea, or at least one take on things. What it was Deutero-Isaiah, what's called Deutero-Isaiah, which is by scholarship, which just means second Isaiah, okay, or Isaiah repeated, written by a different author than the one who wrote the first 39 chapters. So the two author theory is plausible, but the apostolic community did not acknowledge a distinction between the first 39 chapters and the rest of Isaiah. So I have kind of a problem with 2,000 years later kind of second guessing what people that are 2,000 years closer to the actual writing of the book and the scroll, etc., writing of the Sefer, what they're positing. And so, it's kind of like, well, it's a little bit of hubris to say that we know better now, that we have like all of our modern techniques and, sophistication and things like that, to be able to study the background, all these things, than people that were 2,000 years closer to the events. Now, to be sure, people look at attitudes and say, well, of course, people that are quote unquote religious would, would want to say that, no, it's all written by one prophet. Well, maybe they had different understandings of how things were written, but I kind of want to give more credence to the apostolic community, just simply from the fact that they're closer to the event. that we know better than they do, I think posits a bit of hubris. But nonetheless, that's exactly what modern secular scholarship does. But let me continue on. The two-author theory is plausible, but the apostolic community did not acknowledge a distinction between the first 39 chapters and the rest of Isaiah. They ascribed the entire scroll to Isaiah, son of Amos. The Qumran community also drew no distinction between the author of Isaiah 1 through 39 and chapters 40 through 66. And so here he says and he quotes 1QISA. I don't know what that is. I'm not a Dead Sea Scroll aficionado, so I don't know exactly how I think that's the first maybe cave or something like that. Is that
something like that? Like the first one that they went through, and then the number that they found it in, or something like that.
Okay, yeah. So I know I have to do something with the geography of where the location of where they found it exactly. The Greater Isaiah Scroll from Cave 1. Oh, okay, there you go. That would have been helpful to continue on. Marks no division. Excuse me. Between two sections. So basically, he points to two witnesses, if you will. One that it would be that are both semi-contemporary, not with Isaiah, but contemporary with each other, where you have the apostolic community, the writings of the apostles, etc., and they attribute, passages in Isaiah 40 to 66 to Isaiah, and attribute passages, obviously 1 to 39, passages from chapters 1 to 39 to Isaiah, etc., to the same author. And then he's pointing out here that the Qumran community did the same. They didn't make a distinction either. So anyways, what I'm going to be doing here is taking his approach here is he says, let's see here. For purposes of the Torah Club, we do not attempt to enter into the literary or historical criticism discussing the two-prophet approach. Instead, we attempt to understand Isaiah from the perspective of the apostles who view the book as a unified whole written by one prophet. So I just thought that was a pretty balanced way of looking at things. Now, to kind of throw a wrench in all that, one of the first passages we're going to look at is from Isaiah 44. So go ahead and turn to Isaiah 44 by way of looking at some historical passages. That's one of the areas where we're going to go ahead and look at first. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Great to see you. Go ahead and do me a favor. Say something, Jeremy. If you're muted, go ahead and unmute yourself. I just want to make sure and see that I can hear you.
There we go. I'm unmuted now.
Hold on. If you're saying anything, I cannot hear you right now. So give me just one moment. Okay, you're saying, okay, yeah, it looks like you're speaking and I'm not able to hear you.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
What I need to do here is I need to go ahead and change something really quickly.
Can you hear me?
Okay, so it's just my issue here. Let me go ahead and just change one thing. It's just an issue with my particular computer. So give me a quick second here. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so go ahead and say something now, Jimmy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. There we go. Okay, wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
All right, wonderful. Well, hey, glad to have you here and welcome. I'm going to my other screen here, so I won't necessarily see you. But let's go ahead and take a look here at chapter 44 together. And I'm just going to go ahead and look on the English side. I'm not going to really bother to look at any of the Hebrew for this right here. And so let's go ahead and I'm going to look at the very beginning of the chapter. And then we'll go ahead and continue on here. And now hearken Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. So said the Lord your maker. And he who formed you from the womb shall aid you. Fear not, my servant Jacob, and Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. I will pour water on the thirsty and running water on dry land. I will pour my spirit on your seed, my blessing on your offspring, and they shall sprout among the grass like willows on rivulets of water. This one shall say, I am the Lord's, and this one will call himself by the name of Jacob, and this one shall write with his hand to the Lord and adopt the name of Israel. So says the Lord, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first and I am the last, and besides me there is no God. So here he's basically, again, giving consolation to a people who have their posterity in doubt. Say it that way. Now let's skip down here. I want to skip down all the way to, I think it's verse 21, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. Give me one moment. Okay, let me go back up and let's see here. Let's go ahead and, we'll start from verse 1. Remember these, O Jacob and Israel, for you are my servant. I formed you that you be a servant to me. Israel, do not forget me. I erased your transgressions like a thick cloud, and like a cloud have I erased your sins. Return to me, for I have redeemed you. Sing, sing ye heavens. The Lord have done this. So the Lord has done this, not the Lord's. The Lord has done this. Shout, ye lowest parts of the earth, ye mountains, etc. Verse 24. So said the Lord, your Redeemer, the one who formed you from the womb. I am the Lord who makes everything, who stretched forth the heavens alone, who spread out the earth from my power, who frustrates the signs of impostors and diviners he makes mad. He turns the wise backwards and makes their knowledge foolish. Who fulfills the word of the servant and the counsel of his messenger, he completes. He says of Jerusalem, it shall be settled, and the cities of Judah, they shall be built, and its ruins I will erect. So here, what's happening is Isaiah talking to, or he's talking to the time period, if we're saying that this is Isaiah, of course, of a time period that's where nothing is destroyed. Okay, so he's not living through the exile and then living through the ultimate return from the Babylonian exile. This is all pre-Babylonian exile. So this is part of the problem that scholars have, and others who look at this and say, well, this is definitely either written during the time of the exile or after that period. And it gets even worse when we look at chapters, verse 27 and 28. Who says to the deep, be dry, and I will dry up your rivers. Who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and all my desire he shall fulfill. And to say of Jerusalem, it shall be built, and the temple shall be founded. Okay, so now what is he talking about? Let's go ahead and I want to go to Divrei Hayamim. So go ahead and turn to Divrei Hayamim, 2 Chronicles. Divrei Hayamim Beit. And here, by the way, is in Wikipedia all about Cyrus's key decree. So this is Cyrus, who is the Persian ruler, who some say is the son of Darius. Okay, I'll just say the name in English. Darius, who Darius, by the way, some people say is from the union of Ahasuerus and Esther. So it's Esther's sons. So this would be Esther's grandson. Okay, put it that way. So this is a narrative about the return from the Babylonian captivity. The edict is mentioned 3 times in the Bible, each time with minor textual variants. We're going to go ahead and look at 2 of them. It is presented as authorizing and encouraging the Jews exiled by Nebuchadnezzar to relocate the land and actively engage in rebuilding the temple destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. The historical background of the narrative is confirmed by archaeology. However, the edict as such is not corroborated by any finds, etc., whatever. Okay, so we're not concerned so much with that. All I want to show you here is the edict itself. And let's see here. This is 22 through 23. That's right. So let's go ahead and go down here. Just to go ahead and place this in the time period of Israel. And the people of the land took Yehoaz, the son of Yeshaiah, and made him king instead of his father in Jerusalem. Yehoaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And the king of Egypt deposed him in Jerusalem, and he imposed a fine upon the land of 100 talents of silver, etc. And the king of Egypt, verse 4, crowned Eliakim, his brother, over Judah and Jerusalem, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. And Necho took Jehoaz, his brother, and brought him to Egypt. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king and reigned 11 years. So as we could see, basically this is a story, not a story, but a recounting of the exile and thing. And excuse me, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, advanced upon him and bound him in copper chains to bring him to Babylon. So there is the exiling of Jehoiakim. And Nebuchadnezzar brought some of the vessels of the house of the Lord to Babylon and placed them in his palace in Babylon. We can see that in Daniel chapter 4. And the rest of the affairs of Jehoiakim and the abominations which he committed, that which was found upon him, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And Jehoiakim, his sons, reigned in his stead. Now this goes on and continues on all the way through. We have Sitkiyahu, Zedekiah, and we have, continuing on, let me see here. Give me a moment because I want to get down to, okay. And he exiled the survivors of the sword to Babylon, and they became vassals to him and to his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia. To fulfill the word of the Lord in the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land was appeased for its Sabbath, meaning that this was after the 7-year exile that Yirmiyahu talked about. For all the days of its desolation, it rested until completion of 70 years. And in the first year, so this is what we want to get to right here in verses 22 and 23. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, at the completion of the word of the Lord in the mouth of Jeremiah, the Lord aroused the spirit of Cyrus, the king of Persia, and he issued a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it also in writing, saying, so said Cyrus, the king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth has the Lord God of the heavens delivered to me, and he commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judea, whom among you is of all his people. May the Lord his God be with him, and may he ascend. So there, right there, is the proclamation, verse 23 of 2 Chronicles, chapter 36. Now, I want to go one step further. I want to look at that proclamation in the book of Ezra. So sorry to make you kind of turn back and forth and everything. You're giving me a Bible workout over here. Turn to Ezra chapter 1. And we'll go ahead and take a look at one more of those sections here. Excuse me, one more iteration of that proclamation by King Cyrus, by Melech Koresh. And in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, at the completion of the word of the Lord from the mouth of Jeremiah, the Lord aroused the spirit of Cyrus, the king of Persia, and he issued a proclamation throughout his kingdom, and also in writing, saying, so said Cyrus, the king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth of the Lord God of the heavens delivered to me, and he commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judea. Who is among you of all his people? May his God be with him, and may he ascend to Jerusalem, which is in Judea, and let him build the house of the Lord, God of Israel. He is the God who is in Jerusalem, and whoever remains from all the places, where he sojourns, the people of his place shall help him with silver and gold, etc., with the donation to the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. So those are two different iterations of the edict here in Ezra. Ezra and Nehemiah, those two books, are all about the actual rebuilding, or the initial rebuilding, I should say, of the Second Temple. And then in Divrei Hayamim and Chronicles 36, this, as you saw, kind of gives a history of the kings and the exile, the Babylonian exile, then the Persian takeover of the Babylonians, and then the edict to rebuild the Second Temple, etc. So now we go back to Isaiah 44, and we see here in chapter 44, verses 27 and 28, who says that the be dry, now will dry up your rivers, who says of Cyrus, and here I will read from the Hebrew, Omer lechoresh, ro'i v'chol chofzi yashlim, v'leimor liyushalayim tivnei v'cheichal tivaser. Tivased, and who said, "It shall be built and the temple shall be founded." So let me go ahead and I want to just look forward a little bit to one of the commentaries here, and then we'll go ahead and look a little bit at Isaiah, our chapter here, and whoops, went a little bit too far back. And let's look at what some of the kind of more famous commentators have to say about this. So first, actually here, obviously, I can just go back up and look at Rashi. So let me go ahead and show Rashi's comments, and we'll look at Rashi's comments in chapter 44, verse 28. If he has comments, I'm pretty sure he probably will. Although he kind of sticks to the actual text itself a lot of times. So he doesn't really say that much. Here it says, Haomer the Chorish Ro'i, my shepherd, he says, my king. So verse 28. Okay, so let's see here. And I'm looking in the Archbold commentary here. And it basically says Cyrus was the Persian conqueror of Babylonia who allowed his Jewish subjects to rebuild the temple. Yes, that we know. Isaiah foretold events that would occur 2 centuries in the future. Cyrus is called my shepherd because he will lead my flock and will fulfill my desires. So the first half of this chapter is a prophecy, and this is chapter 45, to King Cyrus of Persia, quote unquote. This prophecy was uttered by Isaiah about 160 years before Cyrus became king. Cyrus was not a prophet, of course, but when this message was conveyed to him, he acted on it. Although he failed to do so perfectly, the prophecy recorded in this chapter extols the supremacy of God and his total mastery of the universe. So again, this is part of the problem with looking at Isaiah as one author. So this is not necessarily what we're going to relate. All I want to go ahead and say throughout all of this background, and we'll look a little bit at Isaiah 40, is that this is a prophecy to a people that are going to return to Jerusalem after being exiled. Okay, so as we saw in Divrei Hayamim in 2 Chronicles, what happened was the people were exiled. There was the Babylonians obviously exiled Jehoiakim, and then they took them to Babylon, etc. Babylonians were taken over by the Greeks. Actually, I mean, not by the Greeks, by the Persians. And let's come back here. And then what happened from there? Persians went ahead and had basically a philosophy to go ahead and allow people to return to their ancient homelands, and they wanted to, in order to have peace and not have rebellions, they wanted to go ahead and restore the ancient homelands and the ancient temples and things like that of the different people groups to which they conquered. So every kingdom had its own way of dealing with rebellion. So the Assyrians, by the way, what they did is we saw a little bit about this when we went through some of the historical background for Isaiah chapter 1 on the 3rd week of the 3 weeks of Haftorahs. As the Syrians, what they did is they took one people group from one place, switched them over to another place, take that people group from that place, and swap them. And so they would kind of displace people, put them in a new land, new customs, new language, new religion, everything. And so that way they would just basically kind of confuse the people. So that was the Assyrians' kind of methodology for conquering people. But the Persians had a different methodology, at least in the beginning. They wanted to go ahead and they wanted to restore the homelands and restore the people to their restore the people to their ancient homelands and restore the temples and things like that. This, by the way, is why, if you look in the Talmud, and there's a lot of very interesting lectures and things like that that I've heard from some historians, Jewish historians, that they look at and say that that the biggest influence of an outside religion on Judaism that was developing during the time of the Talmud was the Persian religion. because if you look at the Babylonian Talmud, it a lot of times is contrasting or at least influenced by the ancient Persian religion. And again, it was just mostly though that people group, because they had a better relationship with the ancient peoples that they conquered, or the peoples that they conquered, that influenced a lot of I don't want to say it influenced Judaism, but it influenced them by the way at least of interacting with them. So let's go ahead and I want to just take a very quick look here at some of the first, like I think 5 verses of this section here. Give me a second. I want to just make sure that this presents to everybody. Here we go. Okay. So we're going to now go ahead and turn back to Isaiah chapter 40, and then we'll end up with looking forward to what we're going to be doing for the rest of this week, and then indeed the rest of the next upcoming weeks, all the way to Rosh Hashana. So now with all of that background in mind, here Isaiah, Yeshayahu is saying to the people, Nachum Ami Yomar Elohecha. Now, there's volumes and volumes written on just that one first verse right there. But let's look at verse 2 to kind of flesh out what the comfort or the consoling that Hashem is talking about here. Dabru al-Lev Yushalayim v'kir'u Eleha ki mala'at va'at ki nirtzah avona ki l'kacha miyad Hashem kivlayim b'chol chatusteha. Speak to the heart of Jerusalem, which again is just the idiomatic way of saying, to speak poignantly, and call to her, for she has become full from her host, for her iniquity has been appeased, for she has taken from the hand of the Lord double for all of his sins. And so here, let's go ahead and continue on with verse 3, and we'll go all the way to verse 5, and then we'll go ahead and we'll back up here, and we'll I'll talk a little bit about this in the context of the historical things that we just looked at right now. Kol korei b'midbar, so a voice cries out in the desert. Anu derech Hashem yasharu ba'arava misila le'Eloheinu. A voice calls in the desert, clear the way of the Lord, straighten out in the wilderness a highway for our God. By the way, this is a very famous verse. Where do we see this verse? We see this verse where?
Oh, in the Gospels.
Yeah, in the Gospels. And it's the Kol Korei B'midbar, the voice crying out in the desert is Yochanan HaMatzbiel, John the Baptist. And so we can see that basically what's happening is the Gospels are playing on this time period and what Isaiah's prophecy is talking about for people returning back to Israel, from captivity. And so preparing for God's, return, if you will, quote unquote, with the people. And so here, making the way for God to be established in the world. And so, obviously, or be established, I should say, back in Jerusalem and rebuilding the temple, etc. And so not that God was absent during the time of Yochanan HaMatzbiel, but preparing a way for an even further revelation of God in the Messianic kingdom. So it's kind of like almost the restoration of the original exile from Gan Eden, from the Garden of Eden, right? God's going to come back from that exile, or the people are going to come back from that exile, if you will. But if you don't know that, if you don't know some of this background, then that will not be apparent in reading the gospel writers' commentary on who Yochanan HaMatzbiel was and what he was doing, etc. Kol ge'ei yinaseh v'chol har v'gvia yishpalu v'haya ha'ekol lishmor v'charkasim livik'ah. So every valley shall be raised, every mountain and hill shall be lowered, and the crooked terrain shall become a plain, and the closed mountains it says here at Champagne. I'm not exactly sure what Champagne is. Maybe it's I'm not exactly sure. But what does it say here? What does it say for you in verse 4?
Oh, chapter 40.
Mm-hmm.
Every valley will be raised, and every mountain and hill will be lowered, crooked will become straight, and the heights will become valley.
Okay. So and the close mountains, does it say anything about that?
Every mountain.
Yeah, every mountain and hill should be lowered, right?
Yeah.
And the crooked should be the close mountains. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure this phrase right here that Judaic press uses.
Champagne. I just found the definition for champagne.
What is it?
It's a level open country or a plain. And the second option is actually an obsolete usage, which means battlefield.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, thanks for looking that up. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So, because I was like looking at that, and I'm like, is that a typo? I don't think that Judaic press would have a typo here, but okay. So it's like a level field, basically. Yes.
That's correct, and it's that's correct. It's a really old usage of the word, dating back into like the 13 or 1400s, and it looks like it is related to the word campaign because of that kind of obsolete battlefield usage of it. So it could relate to a battlefield, and that's where the word, our modern word campaign derives.
I see. So Jeremy, right now, he was just saying that he looked up champagne, which is how they translate it here in Judaic press. And I'm just relating, by the way, Jeremy, to Max here, who's live with me. And he was saying that it's like basically a level field, but it's interesting because it's related to a lot of times a battlefield as well, which is where we get like our modern, relation to our modern day word campaign. So anyway, but the idea here, we get that all the valleys should be raised and all the mountains should be lowered. And so the way is made straight. Okay, v'nigla kavod Hashem, Baruch kol basar yastav kipi Hashem diber. And all the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh together shall see that the mouth of the Lord spoke. So what's happening here in these first 5 verses? So one way to look at this is that all of these things right here are written to an exiled people. Now think about an exiled people. If somebody came in the middle of the night and snatched you and your family from your home and threw you in jail, right? And you were there for 7 hours or something insane like that, right? All you want to do is be let go. But by any officials that would come and talk to you, you might be skeptical what their deal is, especially if they didn't tell you why you were being snatched or whatever the scenario is. I mean, we've all seen kind of movies, where stuff like this happens and things like that. And the characters in the movie are whisked away by some shadow, governmental organization or things like that. I don't know. Maybe I've seen too many spy movies. But the idea here is that you have people that were whisked away from their country and through bloodshed and torment. I mean, we've just come through the ninth of Av, and we've seen, the Book of Lamentations talks about, how many people. I mean, that was a national change in Israel, and this is the first time ever, obviously, that Israel's been exiled. Now, unfortunately, we're very acquainted with Jewish people suffering and Israel suffering more so than with Israel being prosperous, because we have such a huge, long history of, Israel being displaced, the Jewish people and those who are attached to the Jewish people through the Messiah, being displaced and persecuted and wandering from nation to nation, not having a homeland, etc. And obviously only in the last, 60, almost 70 years, have we, had a situation where Jewish people can be back on sovereign Jewish land. However, this is the exact opposite of this. This is to a people who had never experienced all of that, and all that they've experienced here, I'm arguing 7 decades of, or who Isaiah is writing to in the future, is the people who will experience 7 decades of being exiled. But that's a new thing, and it's only one generation, maybe 2 generations, if you think about it. And so what's happening here is that you have a people who are skeptical. Is this Persian campaign to go, to allow people to go back to their homelands, is that going to end up in our further exiling again? Is this really something that they can trust? Is this something that that they can, can they go back and live there again? You have people in the Babylonian exile that, and we see this in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, that they're comfortable. They're comfortable in in Persia, now Persia where they're living, and they become comfortable. And most people don't go back to Israel. And so either side of the spectrum, whether you have people that are fearful or skeptical about whether this return is actually going to last or whether it's actually going to be legitimate, all the way to people who don't want to return, basically you're saying, look, your iniquity has been appeased, and Hashem has had, basically giving you all the punishments that you have, that's been coming to you. So now, we're going to make a derech Hashem. We're going to make a way of God, pathways of God or for God or to God. Okay, so that we'll have to talk about tomorrow. But the idea here in verse 4 is just that all the ways need to be made smooth. In other words, that the travel back necessarily is not what's being talked about. It's more talking about the return of the exiles to their homelands. Not necessarily physically how they, obviously you're not going to take a mountain and lower it, but it talks about all the obstacles and all the pains and travails of coming back to Israel need to go smoothly, if you will. So that's one take on everything there from verses 1 through 5. And so what I want to do right now is I want to go ahead to end up today looking forward up, what I did, what I wanted to do. Give me one moment. I want to look forward, like I said, to what's coming, what we're going to be looking at here. So give me just a moment. There we go. Okay, so here we are, and this article is all about 10 special Haftorah readings from Chabad.org, and it talks about the 3 weeks which we've just come through, but then it talks about the 7 weeks, what's known as Shabbat Nachamu, the Nachamu, as you see, 7 of Consolation. And so what's going to happen is, as you see, all of these are from the latter half, the second half of Isaiah, these 7 readings right here. Excuse me. So tomorrow, God willing, and the next day, God willing, we're going to be going through Isaiah chapter 40, the rest of the chapters, going obviously, verses. The rest of the verses going through 1 through 26. And then we're going to be looking at the second half of Isaiah for the next 6 weeks as well. So this week and then 6 more weeks, going all the way to Rosh Hashana. And as I said yesterday, we will probably pare down how many days out of the week that we're actually going over the Haftorah as it gets closer to Rosh Hashana, and we'll focus on other things as well. And so we'll kind of split our time between going over the Haftorah, going over the Haftorah, and then going over the lead up to the Rosh Hashana as well. So, and today was just a prayer. And so the prayer is just that I want to go ahead and really ask for the true Nachama. The true Nachama is the current exile that we're in, because as I've said many times before, and we're just coming through Tisha B'Av, we might have known that we're still in exile. We're in a current exile. Now, I know that's difficult for a lot of people. I mean, past generations and generations of people not having any sense of being, have any sense of connection to Israel, the physical land, as a homeland or anything like that. And obviously, we're speaking in a foreign language. We're speaking right now in a language that's foreign to Judaism and foreign to the Bible, etc. So even the very language that we're speaking and the way that we conduct ourselves in our dominant language and everything like that, all of that is foreign. Now, not to say that it's bad, good, or indifferent, just to say that it's foreign. But God willing, we can all a righteous Messiah coming back speedily in our days. And God willing, we won't even have class tomorrow. That we'll all be having class with Mashiach together in Yerushalayim. And everybody said Amen. So this is Yisrael Levitt here for Virtual Kollel, signing off for today. And God willing, I'll see you guys all tomorrow. God bless.